Welcome back, viewers, from the previous ceramic and pottery session, and we are quickly diving into sculpture. The question is, what is sculpture? Sculpture is a form of visual art that involves shaping or combining materials to form a three-dimensional form or sometimes two-dimensional forms. But the dominant sculpture works are normally in 3D form, so we normally consider sculpture as a three-dimensional artwork. And the next question is the difference between the two types of sculpture. Now we have relief sculpture and round sculpture. The relief sculptures are normally called two-dimensional sculptures because they are normally done on flat surfaces. And it is either done in raised relief above the flat surface, or they sink below the flat surface. That is sunken relief and raised relief. And we have low relief and high relief. With the low relief, the surface that is raised or sinking above is not too much as compared to the high relief. That is the difference. So we have relief sculpture, which comes in two types, whether raised relief or sunken relief. Then we have round sculpture, which we call three-dimensional sculptures or sculpture in the round. And these three-dimensional sculptures are normally you can normally place it. They don't need support. They don't need to be hanged, right? They can stand on their own without falling. Whereas the two-dimensional sculptures, when you put it there, they will fall because they are flat looking. So we normally either hang them on a wall or we place them against a wall or place them against a surface. So these are the two main types of sculptures we have available. And then the next question says, identify and explain the methods of sculpture. The method of sculpture we have are carving, modeling, casting or molding, assembling or construction. Now let's take it one after the other. Carving. Carving is removing or subtracting solid materials bit by bit until a desired form is produced or attained. And the materials that we normally use for carving are stone, wood, ice, because these materials are hard. That should tell you that carving is done when the material is hard or very solid. And we have the second method, which we call modeling. Modeling is adding soft materials bit by bit while shaping it until a desired form is attained. That should tell you that modeling is done when the material is in a soft state or plastic state. And materials that we can use for modeling are plastic clay or soft clay, soft cement or plastics cement, soft plaster or plastic plaster. So materials, when they are in a soft state, soft and sticky, we call them plastic states or plastic material. That is what we normally do when we are dealing with modeling. Then we come to casting. Casting or molding. Casting or molding is pouring liquid materials into a mold or a container in order to harden and take the form or the shape of the mold. The materials that we can use for casting are wax. You can melt wax into liquid state. We have clay. Clay, you can add water to clay to form liquid. You can add water to cement into its liquid state. Then you have plaster, the same thing. Plaster, you can add water to plaster and you obtain plaster slip. We have cement slip, clay slip, then gold. You can melt gold into gold slip, silver slip, aluminum slip, iron slip. That is that. So all these materials can be used for casting. Then we have assembly. So casting is done when the material is in its liquid state, and assembly is done when the materials are in pieces. What is assembly or construction? Is the method of joining pieces of materials to create sculpture forms. And under assembly, we have methods or techniques that we use. One, we have gluing. You can glue pieces of materials together to form a sculpture piece. You can also glue plastic, different plastic waste together to form an assembly. You can also weld different pieces of metals together to form an assembly. Then at some point too, we can also fasten certain materials together. These are the methods or the techniques that we apply during assembly. Now we come to the next question. Explain the techniques we use under sculpture. We have chiseling. Chiseling is using chisels and hammer to subtract solid materials such as stone, wood, or even hard clay in a leather hard state or in a green wear state. You can do carving with it. You can carve on these materials. But please, when the material has been fired, biscuit fired, please, it is not advisable to do carving. Otherwise, you end up creating cracks on the works. But the best clay for carving is when the clay is in the leather hard state, right? Now we have modeling, clay modeling. So under methods, modeling is there. Then under techniques, modeling is also here. Shaping, that is a clay modeling, shaping soft clay by hand or by tools. Techniques that we normally use are pinching, coiling, and slab building. Then we have lost wax casting. That is where the technique of melting away wax during casting and leaving the final sculpture work in place. Then we have welding. Welding is joining metal parts by melting and fusing. Then we have carving with power tools, that is using power drills, grinders, or rotary tools to speed carving. Then you have surface texturing, adding texture by scraping, stamping, or adding materials to the surface. Then you have polishing. Polishing is smoothing and shining surfaces, often in stone or metal. Then you have armature construction. That is a method of building an internal framework to support modeling materials like clay. So normally, before you do the sculpture work, you have to, let's say, a sculpture figure. You must first of all create an armature so that the artwork can stand and not collapse. And we normally use wire or metal rods, or sometimes you can use wood to do this armature, right? Now the next question says, identify and explain the casting techniques. We have filled-in casting. Filled-in casting is filling a mold completely with a liquid material to create a solid form. Filled-in casting technique is filling a mold completely with a liquid material to create a solid form, that is filled-in casting. Then the second one, we have hump casting, or what we call humping. Hump casting or humping is pouring a liquid material or slip into a flat mold and allowing it to partially harden before shaping it into a three-dimensional form. Let me take it again. Hump casting or humping is pouring a liquid material into a flat mold and allowing it to partially harden or cool down before you now shape it into the three-dimensional form that you want. That is hump casting. Then we now have another casting technique we call hollow casting or hollowing. Hollow casting or hollowing. Now, hollow casting or hollowing is pouring liquid material into a mold that has a cavity interior. When that creates, now it's pouring liquid material or slip into a mold that creates a hollow cavity interior when the slip hardens. So normally in hollow casting, we pour the liquid material into a mold that creates a hollow cavity interior when the slip hardens. That is a hollow casting. Then we have the next question, which says identify and explain the basic casting, the basic steps used or applied in all casting techniques. The basic steps applied in all casting techniques. One, we have pattern making. That is the process of creating a physical model or a prototype of the actual artwork to be produced. So in all basic casting technique, we use this process. The first process is pattern making, where you create a prototype of the actual artwork to be produced. Then the next step is what you call core making. It's a process of placing solid materials known as cores inside a mold cavity to create the interior surfaces of a cast artwork or prevent the slip material from filling the entire mold space. That is core making. Then we have the next step we call molding. It's a process of creating the casting molds using sand or plaster for expandable mold casting, right? It's a process of creating the casting molds using sand or plaster, right? For expandable mold casting or metals for non-expandable mold casting, right? So normally for expandable mold casting, we use sand and plaster, and for non-expandable mold casting, we use metals. Is that right? Creating the casting molds using sand or plaster for expandable mold casting, or using metals for non-expandable mold casting. These are the that's the next step: pattern making, core making, molding or mold making. Then we come to the next step. After you have created the mold or the container, the next step is to melt and pour your material. So the next step is melting and pouring. It's a process of heating solid materials into slip or mixing material with water into liquid states, and finally pouring the material into the mold or the container. when you are using metal, right, we use melt resistant material or melt resistant mold or melt resistant material we call porcelain. And the containers that we normally use uh, for heating metals, the containers in which metals are poured are called crucibles, right? Crucibles. Then we come to the finishing, the final stage we call finishing. That is the process of finishing off the casting process by trimming off unwanted portions, filing off unwanted portions, filling in cracks, smoothing, uh, sanding. You can also do painting and polishing. Then we come to the next question, which says, identify and explain some sculpture casting tools you know. We have crucibles. Crucibles are heat-resistant containers used to melt or heat materials such as metals, glass, and etc. Then we have pouring ladle. These are ladles that are used to transport and pour molten metal into the molds. Then we have hexagonal keys. Hexagonal keys, we sometimes call them Allen keys, and they are used for driving bolts and screws with six-sided sockets into their heads, right? So these are the some of the tools that we use for sculpture. Then sometimes we can use pliers. Pliers you normally use for sometimes for cutting and also for holding metal pieces in place for welding to take place. It can also be used for bending metals, plastics. That is the pliers. So take note in case they ask you some of the tools. These are the tools that you can make mention of. Then we also have what we call rammers. Rammers are like clapsticks that are used for stamping, sand drawing, sand casting to make the sand compact. To make the sand compact. Right. Okay, so these are some of the tools that we have available. Right. Okay. So I would like to end the lesson here. And then the next topic we will deal with what we call exhibition. Exhibition, right? Exhibition. So thank you very much for listening. In fact, I wish you good luck and God's favor in all your endeavors and your activities. I wish you H1s. May God be with you and bless you and help you attain your ones and help you attain your first choice schools in SHS. In Jesus' mighty name we pray. Amen.